My name is Claire. I'm founder of the Irish Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, and this is our first Lunch and Learn with Dr. Paula Doyle from Senior Vice President from Cognite. Really delighted to have you here, Paula. Thanks so much. Paula is also a member of the board of the Irish Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, which I'm very grateful for. The idea of the Lunch and Learn sessions is to have an informal chat with people who know lots of really great stuff, like Paula. And a great stuff, I mean, around the green transition and good business that cares about the planet, cares about people, and that is accelerating the green transition. So we're a new Chamber of Commerce, and we are located in So Central. And we're the first Chamber of Commerce to be located here. And that's a Nordic incubator for social innovation. So we're really delighted to have been selected to sit here in Oslo. And please, as a new chamber, feel welcome to come into us, give us feedback. We're really delighted to receive feedback and to engage with people. Put simply, the mission of the Irish Norwegian Chamber of Commerce is to support Irish and Norwegian companies in doing good business, sustainable business. That's what we want to do. We have a very small timeline to reach those goals. There's a lot of really good stuff happening both in Ireland and in Norway. And we just want to share that expertise and connect people to the right people. We believe fully in the UN SDGs, and we want to support companies who also want to align with them. So listen, Paula, you're here. Brilliant. Thank you. Paula, I'd love to know a little bit more about Norway's unicorn, Cognite. If you can tell us about that, tell us about what Cognite does, and then we can talk a little bit more around decarbonisation and digitalisation and so on. But Paula, I should say, is from Limerick. So we're flying the flag here, the Irish flag. And as I said, is Senior Vice President of Energy for Cognite.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks for having me. Yes, a proud Limerick woman, but I'm currently here in Oslo, which is where I work, which is where the Cognite headquarters are. And yeah, as Claire alluded to, Cognite is Norway's first ever unicorn. So that means it's a company that has been valued at over $1 billion, that's less than 10 years old, and is working in the tech scene. And what we do, which I think is it's so relevant for this topic, is we have developed software that allows industrial companies to use their data to make better decisions and to make quicker decisions. Because I think one of the challenges we have in industry today, and this is not a challenge that people are aware of unless you're really in the industry, but what you have to imagine is, if you remember back in I guess it would have been the 1990s, is at least my reference point for that. So if you wanted to go to a restaurant in the city, you would have to find that restaurant's phone number in the phone book. So you'd have to find the phone book first. You would have to find the phone. That would be one phone stuck to the wall, typically in your house. If you wanted to know where it was, you'd have to look up. You'd have to find an atlas. You'd have to look it up. If you wanted to know how the traffic was, you'd kind of have to ask somebody who maybe drove that route. I mean, basically, that was really not information you could get. So the whole process of gathering information was very slow. The information was in different systems. Maybe you had it, maybe you didn't have an atlas. Who knows? But it was very difficult, and basically, you would not be optimized for decision making. And that's kind of how industry, sadly, is today. And what we're working at is bringing industry into kind of the age where we are as consumers, where we have kind of access to information at the touch of a button, where we can make decisions, where we're using AI and artificial intelligence to really inform our decisions as well. And there's when you're able to do that, and when you equip industry kind of with the data and give it to them at their fingertips, then there's so much that can be done. There's literally hundreds and thousands of optimizations, many of them driving sustainable outcomes.
Fantastic. So the optimization of the information is a fantastic thing for the green transition, because we're not wasting energy, we're not wasting time.
Exactly. And the way that we approach it at Cognite, kind of the energy space per se, is we're really focused on kind of there's two sides of it. So one is helping oil and gas to become more sustainable. So that's everything around reducing energy consumption, reducing chemical consumption and raw material consumption, and of course, reducing emissions. And also then supporting the renewable energy. And we're working primarily in offshore wind, solar, hydrogen. And here we're working very much as well on how to make those technologies more efficient, how to make field planning more optimal as well, so that if you're going to place the wind turbines, you're placing them in the optimal site for wind, and also of course the operations and maintenance of the plants as well, because they face the same challenges. But I think it's really important that we look at it from an energy system perspective, because the way forward is with a mix. It's a mix of fossil and it's a mix of renewables, and that renewables mix, we need to see that growing. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But if we are to meet energy supply, and it's a growing energy supply, and of course, if given today's climate as well, if we are to address some of the challenges around energy security, then we need to find a way to make fossils more sustainable. And this is the approach that we take. So, and I think it's very important when you look at kind of decarbonisation, when you look at the IEA, when you look at the scenarios for 2050, that we're really not leaving anything to chance, that we are really addressing the very large challenges we have with scaling up renewables, with scaling up the grid to support the electrification of society as well, and that we're dealing with the challenges of the more dirty oil and gas producers that we have around the world.
Absolutely. And what I suppose there's two things there. Decarbonisation. Can you just put it really, really simply for anyone on the call who might find that a really scary word? What does that look like? And then just walk us through some of that's really important to me, that we break down these words, that people can really own them, and that they're not just out there, because we're all part of this. And then the other thing you spoke about, the challenges, the barriers. If you can talk us through a little bit about that, Paula.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But basically, decarbonisation, it's around removing as much carbon as possible from your industrial operations. So there's different ways that you can do that. If I take an example of like an offshore oil and gas rig, for example, they might be using diesel generators to create electricity, and they are very carbon intensive. So one of the ways where you can remove that carbon is to replace that with power from shore. That would be then you would completely eliminate it. Another way that you can do it as a mid-step is, of course, to optimize the running of the generators. So they're still producing carbon, but you're actually making sure that they're producing the minimal carbon needed. Of course, other ways then to decarbonize is to take the carbon out of the air, so carbon capture. So the very interesting technological and kind of commercialization developments happening here in Norway around that. And of course, the other thing to do is to switch your energy supplies, so move away from carbon producing energy supplies like oil and gas into ones that are not producing carbon. So that would be like solar, of course, and offshore wind and others. But the carbon chain, like the value chain of carbon, is quite complex. So it can be difficult to know, if you're a producer of goods or services and you want to track it back to the kind of beginning of time, it can be difficult to analyze where the carbon is coming from in the entire supply chain. So that's something that's a big kind of piece of work that a lot of companies are working together to address. But basically, I mean, decarbonization, it's just good for everyone. There's no reason not to do it, and there's many ways to do it. And even if you're not hitting the perfect, like net zero from day one, all of the steps that we take to reduce the amount of carbon put into the air are positive steps forward for the planet.
Brilliant. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to ask you there. I suppose, yeah. So Cognite, make data do more. That's really around optimizing the data and making sure that there's no waste. What does your day look like? What's on the agenda? Who are you meeting? And if you could talk us, like, you're SVP of Energy during an energy crisis. That's pretty amazing or pretty scary?
I think it's both. I think it's just incredibly interesting to be living through this period that we have lived through now. I mean, it's been it's been terribly tragic, like both obviously COVID and also the war in Ukraine, horrendous events. But then when you see the impact that both of these events have been having kind of on global economies, on global supply chains, on global energy markets, it's just incredible, and how we need to pull together in a different way to really address these challenges now that we have. And it's kind of a threefold challenge because everybody wants energy and everybody wants their energy secured. So nobody wants to enter a state where we're having to ration energy, where you can kind of have your lights on kind of maybe Monday to Friday and not Saturday and Sunday, for example. So everybody wants secure energy. And then, of course, everybody wants cheap energy and everybody wants green energy. And this is the three things. And those, they're not kind of jigsaw pieces that fit perfectly together today. So we need to work on that. But what we need to do now is find the balance between those three things as we move forward, and try to understand where the priorities are. And it's very interesting, I think also the volatility, because if you think, say, 3 months ago, anyone talking about increasing coal power generation in Europe would have been kicked out of the room. And now that's actually being considered as a serious proposition as it relates to energy security. So I think there's a lot of, the global energy market for me is so interesting because it crosses so many things. I mean, it really hits us as consumers. It's also incredibly geopolitical. And then also, like, the amount of technology and innovation and drive that we need to move into a more renewable global energy supply, that's just incredible. So I think it's a really interesting space to play. And then, of course, with Cognite, what we're doing, where we're really using cutting edge technology to really drive forward and to ensure that industrial operators are able to kind of optimize their energy usage and their emissions outcome. And also we're working, with grid operators as well to make sure that they can stabilize their grid, and so that we can kind of deliver the whole kind of end-to-end optimizations that are needed. And there's just so many that are needed. It's incredible. But what I see, though, is people and industrial companies really eager to take action on this.
Fantastic.
That is something that I feel has really transformed over the last kind of 2 years, especially. And it makes me very optimistic for the future, actually, because I think there's that side, there's like societal pressure, there's capital markets pressure, and there's regulatory pressure all coming together, as well as the kind of, I think, more nuanced understanding from consumers as well around energy markets, around supply and demand. Or, I mean, we've seen it in Norway here, particularly with huge kind of energy increases, and I know in lots of Europe it's basically been the same. So we're now like feeling that we're part of it. And I think it's really for us to kind of be very open about the solutions that are needed and how we can really move forward in a way where we have security of supply, and where we're able to do that like as greenly and as cheaply as possible.
I really think that the key word here is transition. And
Yes.
I've heard you speak about it before, and I really value how you've described it before. And we're not in, I would love if we could all just go to green energy. And I love that people are more and more aware of the green energy, renewable energy choices that we have. But we're not at that stage. What I hear you say is it's not an either or situation yet. We're transitioning.
It's absolutely it, and you're absolutely right. It is, and I feel like in the past the debate has been a bit tabloid about that, and that doesn't really get us anywhere, because if we make a jump too soon, then we don't have the energy supply, and that's really
we're seeing what that means right now.
And if you see, and I think there's great things happening now in Europe, kind of related to energy supply. In terms of they're really trying to reduce the time it takes to permit a wind farm, for example, because today that can be like 7 to 10 years just for permitting. So you're not even talking about like not a single gigawatt of energy coming. You're talking,
guys, if there's anyone on the call who has anything to do with permits, you've got to make it work now. That's not okay. 7 to 10 years.
No, it's not. So that's really being worked on now. So there's that whole kind of bureaucratic problem. So you can imagine the optimizations that need to happen there. That's kind of regulatory optimizations. And then, of course, once you're approved, then you need to build it. And it's a large capital project. If you're thinking about like offshore wind as well, it's big pieces of equipment, it's big boat operations, like it's a lot of engineering. So that also takes time as well. So there's a lag in the system. And we need to, so like, no doubt about it, we need to ramp up kind of production of renewable energy like ASAP. There's no question of that. It's just a question of like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And what does that look like in terms of like energy supply onto the market? And the unfortunate thing is it takes time. And I guess also it takes resources, it takes people, it takes engineering effort, but I think a lot of it, like how we will make this happen, is it's with technology and commercial innovation as well. So new technologies, new ways of scaling up, new ways of commercializing renewables. That's what it's going to take. Because if we can't continue the way that we're going today and expect to hit net zero.
But it's so good to hear that there's also conviction from the people involved, and there's now it's not, oh, maybe this is a good idea, it's this is what we need to do. So that is a big change, and that will get us places. But like you say, time is of the essence.
Time is ticking, and actions speak louder than words, for sure. Yeah. So I'm really happy to see that shift from talk into action. It's what we all need.
Okay, big question. What is a digital twin? That's another word that's out there so often. And
it is. To be perfectly honest, I think digital twin is the most buzzword ever. You know, people use it left, right, and center. But the way, and I think it doesn't help to throw another definition into the mix and kind of into that digital twin soup. But the way we look at it is, it's basically a digital representation of your physical reality and your process reality. That's what it is. So the way that you can kind of, in the real world, you can touch and feel the equipment, you can see what's going on. You can like look at documents and manuals, and you can understand, and you can get all the information about it. We want that in the computer or in the machine.
So we got to wear those big glasses.
No, that is such a misconception, because if you remember, like what I talked about earlier, where industry is back in the 90s. Now, if we can get them to the stage where it's like at our level now today with mobile phones, like mobile phone kind of quality, then that's perfect. Like I don't see anyone walking around the streets with big VR glasses. I've used them for fun. I don't really see a use for them in my normal day-to-day life. So it's really the digital twin. It's about more the data itself. So having the data available, so you can query the digital twin. So you can ask it things like what should I do today to reduce my carbon emissions? Like, what was my best day for carbon emissions in the last 5 years, and why was it like that? Where is this piece of equipment, and how much maintenance has been done on it for the past 5 years? Or how many of these specific types of pumps have failed in the last 3 years, and then try to figure out why. So it's really, the digital twin is really about like having all of the information there, but there in a way that you can easily query it, because it's not enough just to have data all in one place. Then you're like, getting out a shovel and trying to figure out like what's important, what's not, what's connected to what. You need to be able to query it. So you need to be able to ask it questions. And that's the whole purpose. That's what we do. That's our digital twin platform, is what we're calling Cognite Data Fusion. And it's really about making sure that the data is curated, it's available, it's trusted, and it's linked, so that you can easily understand kind of what you have and how to use it.
Thank you, Paula. That's great. What kind of subcontractors does Cognite work with? Excuse me.
So we work with a number of people. So not always as subcontractors, but we have a number of partnerships. So we have some technology partners. That would be the likes of Microsoft and Google, for example. Then we have system integrator partners. So that would be the likes of Accenture, Capgemini, and others. So these are companies that deliver services using Cognite Data Fusion. So typically a lot of these kind of data-driven or algorithmic or AI applications on top, or everything around getting the data in. And then we work with a number of application partners as well. So these are companies that really deliver very smart kind of data-driven or kind of transformative applications in the industrial space. So this can be everything. Emissions reduction is one. It can be drilling optimization. would be another. There's a lot of like process optimization, maintenance optimization, those type of applications. So we're very keen on growing the ecosystem. We very much believe in an ecosystem approach, and like just kind of personally, I really believe that that's the only way forward for industry, is to have like an agility when it comes to kind of what suppliers you work with, what applications you take. So you're always able to take best in class if you have a best in class kind of strategy. Because what happens today is a lot of people get really stuck. You get siloed, you get locked in, and that's no good for anyone.
Thanks. What would you say to Irish companies who are excited to expand here in Norway, and particularly around their sustainability strategy, around sustainability and the importance that Norway places on that, or if you think that's true?
I absolutely do think that's true. And I think Norway is really taking action on the transition. And you can see a lot of the, the capabilities and the competences from oil and gas, offshore oil and gas is what's in Norway, being transferred over to the renewable side, which I think is really fantastic. So we're seeing like a lot of the same people, same approaches, same companies kind of moving from being pure play oil and gas into either switching totally to renewables or moving into more of a mix. And I think that's really exciting. And what we see is big pushes for offshore wind, big pushes for hydrogen, big pushes for carbon capture and storage. And I think there's a fantastic kind of commercial opportunity there for companies who can kind of get themselves out there, get known, and obviously who are coming with something to offer into that space. And of course, Ireland, is, world leading in terms of, tech, which I think is really, really key here, because a lot of what is going to be done is going to be driven by software. And I think it's just a question of using, Claire and the INCC and others to make the right connections into the Norwegian market, because the market for renewables and the sustainability market here it's very hot right now.
There you go, folks. Okay, last question. It's a bit of a cheeky question, but how come you said yes to being on the board of the Irish Norwegian Chamber of Commerce?
So I guess it's two things really. So first of all, I'm very passionate about what Ireland has to offer, and I think it would be fantastic to get more kind of commercial activity between Ireland and Norway. So that's kind of one reason. And then the second reason was, of course, the vision. I loved what the purpose of the INCC was, to be like a modern Chamber of Commerce, like focused on sustainability, focused on digitalisation, really things that matter to me and that I care about. And so you really sold me your vision, Claire. And I'm actually very happy to say you've been living up to it as well. So you weren't overselling. But it was really that, and I really liked the modernity of it as well, because I've had a bit of an impression around Chambers of Commerce being quite stuffy. And this is really important to me that it was.
We're here to make a mark.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I just think that the opportunity there is massive as well. So it's great to have some active glue there, kind of connecting people together, and really driving the conversation forward.